Here are the facts. Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy are two of the most popular presidents in U.S. history. They were also both assassinated. Lincoln was shot in Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. on April 14, 1865, by an actor named John Wilkes Booth. On November 22, 1963, Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. While each of these tragic events altered the course of the nation, political assassinations are not an uncommon occurrence throughout the world. These deaths may be the inevitable result of a power shift, a coup d'etat, or scapegoating. But to some conspiracy theorists, the deaths of Lincoln and Kennedy aren't just disturbing, they are related. Here's where it gets crazy.
Abraham Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846. John Kennedy was elected to Congress in 1946. Abe Lincoln was elected president in 1860. John Kennedy was elected president in 1960. The names Lincoln and Kennedy both contain 7 letters. Both presidents were particularly concerned with civil rights. Both of the president's wives lost children while living in the White House. Both presidents were shot on a Friday in the head. President Lincoln's secretary was named Miss Kennedy. Kennedy's secretary was named Miss Lincoln. Both were assassinated by Southerners. Both were succeeded by Southerners. Andrew Johnson, who succeeded Lincoln, was born in 1808. Lyndon Johnson, who succeeded Kennedy, was born in 1908. John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated Lincoln, was born in 1839. Lee Harvey Oswald, who assassinated Kennedy, in 1939. Both assassins were known by 3 names: John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald. Both names are comprised of 15 letters. President Lincoln was shot in a theater named Ford. Kennedy was shot in a car named Lincoln, made by Ford. John Wilkes Booth ran to a theater and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in a theater. Booth and Oswald were both assassinated before they could go to trial. And a week before Lincoln was shot, he was in Monroe, Maryland. A week before Kennedy was shot, he was with Marilyn Monroe.
It's crazy. Some conspiracy theorists believe that financial interests arranged for the assassination of these presidents. In Kennedy's case, they argue that he was murdered because of Executive Order 11110 from June 4, 1963, which authorized the U.S. Treasury to issue silver certificates and to coin standard silver dollars. To these conspiracists, the central issue here is that Kennedy was taking the power of creating cash from the Federal Reserve, which charges interest to the government when it issues currency. In Lincoln's case, David W. Balsinger and Charles E. Sellier Jr. argue that he was shot, at least partially, because of disagreements with international banking interest over the financing of the Civil War. Lincoln, allegedly rejecting the high interest rates set by the Bank of England and other financiers, worked with Congress to authorize the printing of greenbacks to pay for the war effort. Ultimately, according to these conspiracies, 2 U.S. presidents were killed for financial reasons as much as ideological differences. But could this actually be true? It is true that private financial entities have ousted world leaders in the past. In 1893, a group of businessmen and property owners banded together to create the Committee for Safety and overthrow the Hawaiian monarchy, eventually annexing the nation into the United States. Further examples may be seen in Guatemala and Honduras, where the United Fruit Company wielded deadly power with political and occasionally military support from the U.S. These countries were not annexed politically, but United Fruit used its influence to determine the country's leaders. In Economic Hitman, John Perkins claims that he was hired by the firm known as Chastity Main to trap poor countries in debt, using underhanded methods to strong-arm these nations into privatizing resources and following the commands of the developed world. Yet undue corruption is not the same thing as assassination, and skeptics are also quick to point out several inconsistencies in these theories. In both cases, numerous factions wanted the president out of the picture. There is no solid proof connecting the issuance of greenbacks or Kennedy dollars to their assassinations. While it is true that questions remain regarding both murders, these events have become part of American folklore, and with time, increasingly exaggerated connections and coincidences are bound to be touted as fact. Is there a grain of truth somewhere in the theory? Given that 4 of the 44 U.S. presidents have been assassinated, the fatality rate seems surprisingly high. Yet political figures across the planet are inherently in dangerous positions, especially in times of domestic instability or financial upheaval. Assassinations, coups d'etat, and forced depositions are all too common in the turbulent world of international politics. And it's no secret that in the past, large private organizations have used their economic clout to change the state of a country's government. But does this still happen today? Skeptics maintain that the Kennedy and Lincoln assassinations, like those of most world leaders, were not orchestrated by any international banking cartel. The sheer level of organization and secrecy required would make the task impossible. But to conspiracy theorists, there's only one important question: who's next?